Every airshow organizer eventually wants a military jet team on the schedule, and the instinct is to treat that as one request. It isn't. Requesting the Blue Angels, requesting the Thunderbirds, and requesting the Tac Demo Team are three separate processes, with three separate timelines, and one detail that catches almost everyone off guard. The form most people assume covers all three doesn't actually apply to two of them. The Blue Angels are a Navy team, and their request runs through the full DD Form 2535. The Thunderbirds are an Air Force team, and the Air Force doesn't touch that PDF at all. Every Air Force request goes through a separate website. Tac Demo Teams are single aircraft demonstrations, and depending on which of the four services is flying, you're either DD 2535 or back on that same Air Force site. This guide walks through the current SCEP 25 edition of the form, section by section, then breaks out exactly what changes for each of these three request types and where each one actually gets submitted. Before touching any of the substance in this form, confirm which edition is sitting in your files. The Department of Defense retired the January 2023 edition and replaced it with the September 2025 edition, and the difference isn't cosmetic. The form gained an entire section. What used to be sections 1 through 7 is now sections 1 through 8, because FAA coordination moved out of section 4 and became its own standalone section 8. If your reference material still cites section 4 for FAA sign-off, you're working from the old structure. The FSDO exemption also widened. Under the prior edition, only static displays skipped Flight Standards District Office review. Under the current edition, static displays, flyovers, and parachute or jump teams, including the Golden Knights, all skip it. Two smaller but practical changes. The current edition is a fillable PDF built specifically for Adobe Reader, so opening it in a browser tab won't unlock the form fields, and the OMB control number changed, pushing the expiration from January 2026 out to September 2028. Confirm you're on this edition before you fill in a single field. It helps to be precise about what DD Form 2535 actually is, because the most common mistake organizers make is treating it like a booking request. It isn't one. It's an eligibility screen. The form tells the Department of Defense whether your event qualifies for a flyover, a static display, a single aircraft demonstration, or a full demonstration team. A favorable determination means the door is open. It doesn't mean anyone has agreed to show up. There's also a strict rule about who can complete the form. Uniformed service members, DoD civilians, and DoD contractors are barred from serving as either the point of contact or the site certifier for a non-military event. And a contracted event promoter can't complete the form either. Ownership sits entirely with the requesting organization, usually the airshow committee or the sponsoring nonprofit, not any vendor working on their behalf. Once DoD approves eligibility, the real work starts. The requester has to reach out to the specific unit directly and negotiate the actual appearance. And if more than one service accepts a flyover request for the same event, the requester is on the hook to notify the others so they can stand down. The current edition organizes into 8 sections, and the first 4 handle setup and eligibility before any of the team-specific rules come into play. Section 1 is activity. This is where you check the category that defines your entire request. Flyover, static display, single aircraft demonstrations, other aerial support, or a full aerial demonstration team. Whichever box gets checked here determines which deadline and which submission channel applied later, so this isn't a formality, it's the pivot point for the rest of the form. Section 2 covers event and site information. The site address, elevation, runway length and width, whether arresting gear is available, and what type of venue you're running. Section 3 is requester information, your organization, your point of contact, and a set of non-discrimination and public access certifications DoD requires from every requester. Section 4 is the program section, your event's theme and objective, whether you're charging admissions, any fundraising tied to the event, and a history of which DoD teams, if any, have performed there before. None of these 4 sections carry hard deadlines on their own. The timeline pressure starts in the sections that follow. The back half of the form is where the real commitments live. Section 5 is support, and it's the section organizers most often underestimate. You're initialing a full list of obligations here. Securing the FAA airshow waiver, covering transportation and lodging, providing fuel at contract prices, arranging security, firefighting and crash response, ambulance and medical coverage, and running an emergency response drill on rehearsal day. Every initial in that section is a real line item in your event budget, not paperwork. Section 6 is site certification, signed by whoever holds authority over the venue, confirming the site is actually locked in. Section 7 is requester certification, signed by the organization's president, chairman, or wing commander, and that signature expires the day after the event, so it can't be reused for a future request. Section 8 is FAA coordination, handled by the local flight standards district office, and it runs on its own clock. A minimum 45-day review window, separate from whatever deadline DoD sets for the team request itself. As you'll see on the next two slides, that DoD deadline is either 1 or 2 years out. The FAA's 45 days is a floor, not a substitute. Track both timers independently. The Blue Angels are the U.S. Navy's Flight Demonstration Squadron, and a request for them is the most straightforward of the three we're covering here. It goes through the full DD Form 2535, checked under Section 1, Item E, Aerial Demonstration Team. 3 details define this request. The deadline is July 1, 2 years before your event date. Request a 2028 show, and that paperwork is due July 1, 2026. The event itself has to qualify. Aviation-oriented, open to civilian aviation participation, open to all military services, and scheduled inside airshow season, which runs mid-March through mid-November. And there's a cost organizers sometimes miss. Civilian requesters owe partial reimbursement, covering lodging and meals for every official demonstration, and that obligation applies even if you're charging admission to watch the team. Once complete, the form routes to the Navy Office of Community Outreach in Millington, Tennessee by email. DoD releases the full season schedule in December, 2 years ahead of the season itself. So after that point, your only path onto the calendar is a cancellation opening up a slot. The Thunderbirds are an Air Force team, and this is the slide that saves people from a wasted submission cycle. The eligibility criteria and deadline match the Blue Angels exactly. Same July 1, 2 years out timeline, same aviation-oriented civilian participation, airshow season requirements. What's different is the intake channel. The Air Force does not accept the DD 2535 PDF for this request. Every Air Force request, Thunderbirds included, has to go through the Air Force Aerial Events website instead. That means there's no mailing address and no PDF attachment for this one. You're creating an online account and submitting through a web-based form. Everything else lines up with what you just heard on the Blue Angels slide. Same December schedule release, 2 years ahead of the season, and the same reimbursement structure, covering lodging and meals per official demonstration, governed by the Thunderbird support manual the team publishes each year. If you remember one thing from this slide, make it this. Matching eligibility rules do not mean matching submission methods. Mail this one to the wrong place and it simply won't be processed. A Tac Demo Team is a different category entirely from what we just covered. Instead of a formation team, it's a single aircraft and a single pilot flying a tactical routine. No wingmen, no formation work. On the form, that distinction matters enough to get its own checkbox. Section 1, Item C, Single Aircraft Demonstration, rather than Item B. Right now, there are 4 active single-ship programs spread across 3 services. The Air Force runs 3. The F-16 Viper Demo Team, the F-35A Demonstration Team, and the F-22 Raptor Demonstration Team. The Navy runs the F-A-18 Tac Demo. The Marine Corps doesn't have an active jet demo in this lineup anymore. It retired the V-VIII Harrier in June 2026 after more than 50 years of service, and single-ship Marine Corps requests now center on the F-35B Lightning II instead. Any one of these programs can headline an air show without the 2-year lead time a full demonstration team requires. That's the key difference to carry into the next slide. Because the form treats single ship demos as their own category, the deadline structure resets. Instead of one calendar rule for everyone, each service runs its own clock, and those clocks are considerably shorter than what you just saw for the Blue Angels and Thunderbirds. Here's where the four-service split really shows up. Air Force single aircraft demonstrations are due July 1, 1 year before the event, not 2, with next year's schedule announced the following December, and submitted through the Air Force Aerial Events website rather than the DD2535, the same channel rule that applied to the Thunderbirds. Navy's single aircraft demonstrations share that same July 1, 1 year out deadline, but the submission method is different. This one goes on the DD Form 2535, routed to the Navy Office of Community Outreach. The Army doesn't run a calendar deadline at all, just a 60-day minimum notice before the event, which gives organizers more flexibility but also less runway if a request needs revising. The Marine Corps sets its own date entirely, August 26th, 1 year before the event, covering the MV-22 Osprey or the F-35B Lightning II, whether it's a demonstration or a static display. One change worth flagging. The AB-8B Harrier that used to round out this category retired in June 2026 after a sundown ceremony at Cherry Point. So that airframe is off the table for new requests now, and the old Harrier-specific ground support, the hard surface or open water, the 50 gallons of distilled water, no longer applies. This comparison table pulls together everything from the last 4 slides into one view, and it's worth pausing on rather than skimming past. Reading down the columns, the Blue Angels and Thunderbirds share the same lead time, the same July 1 deadline 2 years out, and the same December schedule release. The only thing separating them is that submission column DD2035 for the Blue Angels versus the Air Force website for the Thunderbirds. The Tac Demo column tells a different story service by service. Air Force and Navy both use July 1, but 1 year out instead of 2. Army has no fixed date, just that 60-day floor. Marine Corps runs entirely on its own calendar, August 26th. The row worth lingering on the longest is lead time, because it's the one that actually drives your planning calendar. Get the service and the category right in section 1, and the rest of this table tells you exactly which deadline and which door apply to your request. Once you know which team and which service you're requesting, submission comes down to one of exactly 2 doors. If you're requesting anything from the Army, Navy, or Marine Corps, and that includes the Blue Angels, you complete the DD Form 2535, get the FSDO signature in Section 8 if your activity requires it, and email the completed PDF to that service's Community Outreach Office. If you're requesting anything from the Air Force, the Thunderbirds, or an Air Force Tac Demo Team, skip the PDF entirely and create an account on the Air Force Aerial Events website instead. On that Section 8 requirement, remember it's only skipped for flyovers, static displays, and parachute or jump teams. Everything else, every demonstration team and every single aircraft demo, needs FSDO coordination, and the form calls for a minimum 45-day review window on top of whatever deadline applies to the request itself. Getting this wrong doesn't just cause a delay. A DD2535 mailed to a Navy inbox for an Air Force request, or vice versa, simply sits unprocessed until someone notices the mismatch. Bringing this all together, remember 2 clocks in one edition. The 2-year clock applies to full demonstration teams, the Blues and Thunderbirds, with a July 1 deadline either way, and the only variable is whether that request travels as a form or as a website submission. The 1-year clock applies to Tac Demo Teams, and even that isn't uniform. Army needs just 60 days, and the Marine Corps runs to its own August 26 date. Before you submit anything, confirm you're working from the September 2025 edition of DD Form 2535, not the retired January 2023 version. The section numbers and the FSDO exemptions change between them. Route any Air Force request to the website, not the PDF, and build in the FSDO's 45-day review window as its own deadline, separate from whichever DoD lead time applies to your request. Miss any one of these, the wrong edition, the wrong door, or the wrong clock, and the date circled on your calendar stops being the date that matters.